Ah, Sonic Forces. Me personally, I do think that the game is okay. That's all I'm gonna say on the subject. But whether you like the game or not, one thing's for sure is that the game is very easy. So, let's make it harder by trying to avoid as many rings as possible. Sonic Forces is known for having an abundant amount of rings compared to the other modern Sonic games. Even in some stages, you can max out at 999 rings. And especially since there's a lot of automation that guides you towards rings, we have our work cut out for us. Of course, the only rule is we cannot collect any rings. However, you see that ring counter at the top left? Well, I'm going to add my own ring counter on the top right as well. That's because after each checkpoint, I respawn with 0 rings if I die. So this ring counter at the top right will tally every single ring that we are forced to collect with no other way around. So yes, unfortunately, there is no way for us to collect absolutely 0 rings, but we will see what's the absolute least amount that we have to collect. Red star rings don't count since they don't add to the gold ring counter, so if we happen to get one, then that's okay. Today we are only tackling the 7 main modern Sonic stages, so no boss battles and no tag team stages. However, if you guys would like to see me do those as well as classic Sonic stages and custom hero stages, then let me know down below. Without further ado, let's start off with Lost Valley. Things aren't too tough so far, just run to the side of these rings and keep quick-stepping to the left at this turn. And again, at this next part, just run around this trail of rings. I took my time just to be safe. Obviously, these can be easily avoided too. Once you get into the 2D section, be sure to stop and then jump over these rings. Here's our first roadblock, a ramp with rings. Luckily, we can actually avoid these easily by jumping once, then boosting. Jump boosting will be very useful for this run. We can jump boost again to get to the top route, since the bottom route has unavoidable rings. Once I got to this part, I was a little stumped. I thought I had to jump in between those sets of rings, but I was actually able to barely jump boost over them entirely. But then we get to the sand waterfall. I was never able to clear this part without collecting rings. The sand moves too fast, and during this last section, there's an invisible ceiling. After jump boosting as many times as I could, the least amount of rings I got during this section was 4. So let's add that to the counter. Thankfully, the rest of Lost Valley was easy. I just continued taking my time avoiding these trail of rings. I took the left path here since there was no rings, and afterwards I stomped out of this boost ring and avoided this last set of rings. Lost Valley is down, with only 4 rings collected. Next up is Egg Gate. These first 2 sets can be cleared by double jumping over them at full speed, and then you can boost over these. At this part, I took the middle path since there was no rings to worry about, and the next set of rings can also be easily avoided. This next set was on the grind rails, so I actually jumped off, stomped, and then landed back on them first try. But then I stupidly ran into the next set of rings, so I had to do it again. This next set on the grind rails can also be jumped over, as well as these next sets of rings. They were easy to avoid too. But then we get to here, a booster that leads us into a bunch of rings that we cannot jump over. There's a total of 32 rings on this line, and the least amount I was able to get was 5. So that's actually pretty good. But then I realized, what am I doing? I can beat this stage with collecting 0 rings. All I had to do was pull off the Egg Gate glitch. I don't know if it has an official term, but I do remember that I used to do it a lot when I was speedrunning this stage with my friends. What I have to do is get to this platform, take out these barriers, and at this spot near the springs, I have to boost once and immediately hold jump. Sonic will pass through this entire 2D section, and he will now be flying through the stage at a fast speed. I now have to guide Sonic to the last grind rail at the end of the stage, but it's not that easy, since at one point, the screen will cut out, and you have to guide yourself based on memory. But, after a bunch of tries, this happened. I did it. I actually did it. I pulled it off. I even loaded in the QuickTime events. Egg Gate has been beaten and 0 rings were collected. Next is Luminous Forest, and can I say that the music for the stage is one of my favorites in the game? Am I allowed to say that? I mean, I'm gonna say it anyway. These first sets of rings can easily be avoided by quick stepping to the left. Once I got to this part, I had to jump in between these two sets and carefully jump under these rings. But then we get to here, another unavoidable set of rings. And no, I can't take any of the other bottom pathways because those have even more unavoidable rings. So for this pathway, the least amount of rings I was able to get was 2. So let's add that to the counter. The rest of this 2D section is nothing to worry about, except for this last jump where you have to run and jump to the end of this platform. Also watch out for these rings near the robots. And now we get to the 3D section. Of course, usually you would just hold down boost and mindlessly run forward. However, I actually took my time here and made sure that I didn't collect any rings, just to be safe. And the same can be said about the next part. I took the top route here since the rings were easy to go around. Just make sure to land without touching the rings. And now for the last part of the level with Lyric, I mean the giant snake. Once you're eaten by the snake, you actually have to fail all the quick time events, because if you do, then the snake will send you on a bottom pathway with no rings. If you do all the quick time events, then you'll be shot into a bunch of rings, so you better fail them all. Luminous Forest has been cleared with only 2 rings collected. Now at Sunset Heights. This first set of rings can be avoided no problem, but this next set is a bit more complicated. You have to go to the edge of the wall and move Sonic very slowly. If he moves any faster, then his arms will touch the rings, so you have to inch Sonic very carefully up this staircase, and then do it again for another one. But then these next set of rings are easy peasy to avoid. Once at this part, immediately quick step to the left and you can jump boost over everything. When you get into the 2D section, be sure to avoid these sets of rings and take this pathway with the robots since there's no rings to worry about. After jump boosting over more sets of rings, we get to this part. This booster will lead us into an automated half pipe that, you guessed it, will give us rings. What I had to do was boost up the ramp, jump, and stomp at the perfect time to dodge both the rings and the other booster. After that though, there's no other rings to worry about, so we were able to beat Sunset Heights with no rings collected, and we didn't even have to use a glitch this time. Now onto Network Terminal. Go to the left to dodge the rings, and take the path on the left grind rail. This path has no rings. However, at this section of the stage, no matter which path you take, you have to collect rings. So 7 rings are added to the counter. After dodging these sets of rings, we make it into the 2D section. This first jump is a bit tricky. I had to jump, then double jump onto this edge, and then jump and double jump again onto this edge to avoid those rings. After dodging those springs, at this part you can just slide under this platform to go into a tube to avoid the upcoming rings. And you can do the same thing again at this next part of the level. Just slide under this platform and go into another tube. The tubes helped us skip a whole lot of this level. Once you make it to here, jump boost over those sets of rings, and again slide under this platform to go into another tube. At this point, we have to deal with another half pipe that will force us to get rings. However, we can get to that boost ring up there with a jump boost, so we can avoid those rings in the half pipe. After avoiding these last sets of boosters and rings, Network Terminal is down with only 7 rings collected at the beginning. Things are going better than I expected. What's next? Oh, Metropolitan Highway. Yeah, remember how I just said that things were going good? Well, it seems that Metropolitan Highway wants to utterly kill our run. Within seconds, we're greeted by rings that we need to jump over. To get over these, I had to run at full speed, double jump, and boost, then stomp at the right time. Keep on jump boosting over the rings in this pathway, and once we get into the 3D section, these right here are the only rings to worry about. There's none other for this entire section. But now, things are gonna get worse. For these, do a little jump, then homing attack the robot to go under the rings. But then we get to here, a bunch of platforms that automatically move you towards rings. What I did was run at full speed, double jump, and homing attack the spring to get past those rings. But this is just the beginning. Once I made it down here, I was completely stumped. No matter what I did, it seems that I'm forced to collect rings, at least with my ability. What I ended up doing was double jumping over the pit of rings, but this by itself was very difficult, and I died so many times to this. I had to activate the moving platform, which means I had to get 1 ring, and then double jump to land back on the moving platform, which means I collected 2 more rings. If I just double jumped and boosted over all the rings, then I would either hit the wall or collect more rings and possibly fall off the platform. And sometimes when I jumped and collected 1 ring, the platform wouldn't activate, so I ended up dying even more times. By the end, the least amount of rings I got out of all this was 3 rings. And after all that, look what happens. We're greeted by more rings that we can jump boost over, but then we're greeted by this. A whole loop filled with rings and no other way around. And how many rings does it give you? 39. 39 rings. And since we had collected 3 rings before, our new total is 42 rings. And again, that's not all, it still gets worse. If you keep on running, then you would end up running into another trail of rings. Thankfully, we can jump boost over these. But then look at this. This looks unavoidable, but actually, we can barely double jump in between this ring and these rings. And just when I thought things were done, look, we have another platform that will move you towards rings, and we can't jump over them this time since there's a wall. Once this platform moves us, we have to jump out of the platform at the right time to get to the next one. The least amount I was able to get was 7 rings, which means our new total is now 49 rings. And even after all that, we still have to do more careful platforming to dodge the rest of these rings. After that 2D section, what a surprise that for the last part of this level, there's no more rings. Metropolitan Highway really bested us, especially with that one loop. Actually, I went to replay the stage, and at this part, I got 2 rings instead of 3, but I didn't do anything different. So the least amount of rings I got for this level is actually 48. But still, that one loop had 39 rings. That's over 80% of our final total for this stage. If you guys know any way to avoid that loop, then please let me know, I'd love to find a way around it. But that just leaves us with Mortar Canyon. Hopefully things will go better. To start, this entire first section can be avoided by jumping over this first set of rings and then jumping off the stage, letting Sonic float through the air down to about here. After homing attacking these enemies, platform your way to the grind rail since the boost ring has more rings under it. Be sure to avoid these rings as well as this set over here. Again, I took my time since I didn't want to die. And be sure to go off this ramp from the side to avoid the rings when landing. Once you make it to this point, you can jump over this entire next section, and at this part with these ostrich looking robot things. I took my time again, but watch out for the rings towards this upward slope. Once you make it to the top, you can jump and boost over the entire next section. It's kind of mesmerizing to watch Sonic fly like that. Just be sure to land at the very end. Alright, here's the home stretch. And yet again, I took my time, homing attacking these ostrich robots, and after this final set of rings, we have done it. Mortar Canyon has been beaten, and we collected 0 rings. Now that's what I'm talking about. A good way to end it. Now let's add everything up. We got 0 rings from Egg Gate, Sunset Heights, and Mortar Canyon, 2 rings from Luminous Forest, 4 rings from Lost Valley, 7 rings from Network Terminal, and of course, 48 rings from Metropolitan Highway. Altogether, that's 61 rings. Honestly, that's not bad. I thought it would have gone over 100. But of course, I am still a little salty that over half of our rings came from that one loop in Metropolitan Highway. If you guys do know of any way to lower that ring count, then of course, let me know. But that's gonna be all for this video, and again, let me know if you'd like to see me tackle the rest of the game. It was really fun amping up the difficulty for Sonic Forces. Anyway, until next time, I'll see you guys later.